Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Spencer Sugarman. I am a UX researcher at Google working on Google Kubernetes engine.
And hey, everyone, I'm Dan. I'm a user experience designer working on Google Kubernetes engine. I've been involved in the open source Kubernetes project for over 2 years now and spoke at KubeCon North America in Seattle about Dashboard in 2016. So it's fun to be back here at KubeCon speaking about Dashboard again.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about Kubernetes Dashboard. As UX professionals, it's really awesome for us to be talking about the UI tool for Kubernetes and kind of showing you how you can leverage it and use it for your own workflows. So today we're going to talk about 3 things. We'll discuss exactly what Dashboard is and why you should be using it, as well as a demo showing exactly all that. We'll be presenting some research findings from a survey that we did to learn about how we can improve Dashboard. And then we'll also share where you can learn more and how you can get involved in the project. So what is the Kubernetes Dashboard? The dashboard is a general purpose web-based UI for Kubernetes clusters. It allows users to manage and troubleshoot applications running in the cluster, as well as manage the cluster itself. This screenshot up here is the overview page from the latest version, 1.10, which was released about 3 months ago. So development's still ongoing, but it's actually released 1.0 in 2016. This is a screenshot from there. And so dashboards have a long time to mature and stabilize. So if anyone asks, it's definitely production ready. And like many things, many other tools I'm sure you've heard about today, all this work is thanks to the open source community. It's hosted on GitHub in the Kubernetes project. And since the project started, there have been over 2,000 commits from 143 contributors. These are just some of the active contributors today. And I want to give sort of special thanks to Sebastian Florek, who's a co-lead, as well as Dan Romlein, who's a co-lead, and Peng Xiao, who helped us create the great demo you'll see later. And I should say the special interest group that is responsible for Dashboard is SIG UI. So if you want any more information about SIG UI or the Dashboard, you can go on Dashboard on GitHub and look up SIG UI to learn more.
All right, thanks, Spencer. So before we go any further, I want to delve into this question of why we should have a UI for Kubernetes. There's kubectl, and we have APIs and other ways to interact with Kubernetes. So what function does a UI provide? We're going to get into some evidence now of the usefulness of Dashboard. So in that survey that Spencer mentioned that we conducted, 60% of respondents said that they found that they use a UI to either monitor or manage their Kubernetes resources. So this doesn't get to the why question of why they're using a UI, but it does suggest that there is a reason there. So what are some of those reasons? Well, firstly, UIs help you understand what's going on with your system fast. In this screenshot of Dashboard, I can see this particular pod has an error that's failing, and that gives me a starting point to then go investigate and dig in deeper to what might be causing that issue. So this is what's sometimes referred to as a single pane of glass, that there's one location that I can go to view the state of my system. Monitoring graphs are a big part of this understanding what's going on in your system. So here I'm looking at an individual deployment, I think it is. Yeah, so select a deployment, and then I can see, even though there aren't any errors yet, that there's spiking CPU, and maybe this is going to cause some issues, and I'd want to investigate that. And the next main strength of a UI that we'd like to call out is onboarding new Kubernetes users, which we think is the biggest value that Dashboard can bring the larger Kubernetes community. And it's the reason that we classified the skill level of this session as beginner, so that hopefully if you're new to Kubernetes, you're still trying to figure out what all these different things are, then you can walk away at the end of this talk with some strategies to help learn about more about Kubernetes. In that same survey that we conducted, over half of our respondents said that dashboard they found was very useful or extremely useful for learning about Kubernetes. And a quote, "At the start, it was great to be able to visually see the resources and understand how they are grouped. This helped someone like me with a hands-on but visual learning style." So as someone's learning Kubernetes, we know Kubernetes can be difficult to learn, and there are a lot of questions that come up like, what's a pod? What's a deployment? What's a service? And in dashboard, I can see those resources, and I can also see the relationship between them, the connections. So looking at this replica set, I can see the pods and the services that are related to that replica set. And finally, it's also possible to create, read, update, and delete resources right from within the dashboard UI. So this shows editing a deployment. I can go in, change the YAML, and then update it. And you'll see another example of this in our demo later. This isn't a best practice for production, but as a way to test things or to learn about Kubernetes, it can be a powerful tool. So describing how great dashboard is, you might be wondering, do we think that it replaces kubectl? What are we arguing for here? Well, to answer that, no, it definitely does not replace kubectl. We think dashboard and kubectl and APIs all have their own strengths. And some of the strengths we talked about for dashboard already are providing an overview, so that single pane of glass looking at my cluster, monitoring and troubleshooting, the graphs and charts the dashboard has, and onboarding new Kubernetes users. So rather than working in a command line and having to switch back and forth between terminal and docs, that information can be all displayed in the context of one interface. And two others that I'd like to mention are sharing information with non-technical stakeholders. If someone's not as comfortable looking at terminal output or just looking at a doc, dashboard can be a more visually compelling way to show, say, the applications that your team's responsible for running. And finally, infrequent tasks. So even if someone is an advanced Kubernetes user, if they don't do a particular task very frequently, they might be less confident in doing that. So a UI can assist them in that. So to summarize this whole section, we want to use the right tool for the job. We think dashboard and kubectl both have their own strengths, and we want to play to those strengths. So we'd encourage you to try out a UI if you haven't done so. Our claim is if you're using kubectl, you should be using a Kubernetes UI. It could be dashboard. It could be your Kubernetes cloud provider's UI. There are a lot of other excellent UIs out there, but we think that there is a place for UI. All right, so dashboard had its last update at KubeCon, as I mentioned, 2016. And since that time, there's been a lot of changes and a lot of work done. So we're going to talk briefly about some of those now and then what the team is currently focused on for upcoming roadmap work. So these are all features that have been a small selection of features that have been released since the 2016 update. And I won't get into these too much because you'll see quite a few of them in our demo in just a few minutes. But if you're interested, the changelog on GitHub is the best place to learn about what new features have been released. And as far as current work, what we're focused on as dashboard SIG UI team is the Angular migration, migrating from Angular 1 to Angular 2. The current version of Angular is being sunset, so this moves the project to a more easily supportable place, and hopefully we'll get more contributors after we've completed that. That hopefully will be finished Q1 2019, so the next couple months. And we're also migrating the metrics server from Heapster to the Kubernetes API. This is to maintain our very popular feature of displaying nodes and pod metrics. And the metrics server, if you're not familiar, provides benefit to the ecosystem through a very lightweight and scalable method to view cluster-wide metrics and dump them into sinks, such as Prometheus, which is another CNCF project. And this screenshot is just a dark theme, which we've heard from a lot of people as a request, so that will be possible after the Angular migration. And then we're also working to make that customizable so that if an organization wants to change the branding colors, that they'll be able to do that. Okay, demo time. We've talked about what dashboard is, why it's so great, and now we're going to get into how a use case might go if you're using dashboard. So give us 1 second to pull up our video. I think I've got, yeah. So before I do that, to set the context of what this will be, excuse me, I am an application operator, and I'm responsible for this website, fake website, KubernetesSwag.com. And as you can see, it's fairly outdated, fairly old style. And so we've got a new version that we are releasing today. And the developer responsible for releasing pushed the update and left for vacation. And now someone else in the team noticed that they weren't seeing this new version. They're still seeing the old version. So we've got a problem that needs investigation. And as a technical note, this new design can be switched on or off via an environment variable called app_mode. So you'll see that in the demo. And the environment variable is mapped to a config map in Kubernetes. Okay, so I think now, all right, let's get this thing going. Pull up the video. All right, so I'm going to investigate, see what the problem might be. I go to the website, refresh it a few times. Sure enough, still the old design. So I come over to dashboard, and here I can see that there are some issues, that there's a failed pod, a failed deployment. So I'm going to go up to the global search bar, and I'll search for swag, which will return any resources that have swag as part of the name. And I noticed that the deployment for this app, Kubernetes Swag, has an error. It says failed to pull image Kubernetes Swag mu. So I noticed right away that rather than new, I have a typo. It's MEW. So what you're going to see is an example of, in the UI, I can take an action, which is access from this menu, and then I can view the YAML for this deployment, and I can edit it. So view edit YAML, and that'll open up the YAML editor. I can scroll down to where the image error is and update that correctly. Click update, and then I'll visit the detail page for that deployment that I just updated. And now I see the replica set, and it's referencing the correct image. So Kubernetes Swag new. So I'll go back to the site now and hit refresh. But for some reason, I'm still seeing the old theme. I'm not sure why. So part 2 of this, I remember that the theme is controlled by that environment variable that I mentioned, app_mode. So I'll go back to the dashboard, and under config and storage, I'll go to the config maps section and find that Kubernetes swag config map. And I can see that app_mode is set to old still. So that needs to be updated. So edit the YAML as I did with the deployment. Click update, and now you can see app mode is set to new. And then I'll go to the pod controlling the Kubernetes swag app and see that the environment variable is correctly set to new. So everything's good there. Now when I go back to the UI, hit refresh. Still no luck though. Still not seeing the update. So I remember, oh yeah, I need to delete the pod to get the updated environment variable. Or I'm sorry, that comes next. First, I'm going to exec into the pod. So this opens a terminal page for the pod. And this I'm going to check the environment variable here. And it's still set to old. So at this point, I remember I need to delete the pod. So I'll go back to that pod page, just hit delete. Okay. Click new, hit delete. And then we'll go back to the deployments page and can see the pod creating. And at this point, it's created. And then going back to kubernetesswag.com. Now we finally see the new theme. Hooray! So, and then I just go back to the UI and confirm that all these changes are correct. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. So things are going good, but then we have users that are reporting they're seeing 500 errors. So I go to the UI as the on-call still responsible for this, and I see a 500 error as well. So back to trusty dashboard to see what might be going on. I go to the deployments page, and here I see, looking at the overall CPU and memory usage for all these deployments, that there's a spike increasing around the time when the change was made. So this is a case of where a dashboard can really excel at showing that overview of where the problem might be. So looking at the specific deployment that controls this app, I can see that the memory usage goes from like 1.5 megabytes to 300, and CPU is also going up. So I hypothesize that maybe there's a memory leak. So I go to the replica set for this deployment. And I'll check the logs. So this is the logs viewer for dashboard. It's about to pull up. And right away, I see that I'd left myself a note earlier that there is a memory leak causing spiking CPU and memory that I forgot to fix. So I made a hotfix for it, but I didn't implement it. So now I'll go back to the deployment, now that I know what I need to do. Deployments overview page, and select that specific deployment and edit its YAML, and change the new image to an image of hotfix. And then update that. And now in the deployments overview, I'll see the pod creating. And now that pod is created, 28 seconds old. And we'll visit the workloads page. So here at the workloads page, it seems like CPU and memory is stabilized at that high level. And then we'll view the individual deployment. This is deployments overview. Look at that individual deployment. And now memory is back to 1.5 megabytes roughly, and CPU is basically nothing. So issues are resolved. I can finally go back to sleep and call this a success. So this is just one set of use cases about how Dashboard could potentially provide value and be used in a real-world scenario. All right, so now I'm going to turn it back over to Spencer to talk a little bit more about our research that we've conducted.
Thank you. Yeah, so Dan talked a lot about what Dashboard is, how you can use it, and then also a little bit about what are some of the upcoming features that the team is working on. But we also wanted to look into what we should be doing next. What is the future of Dashboard? So we ran a survey looking into how do people use Dashboard today and how do they want to use it tomorrow. We heard from 163 people of all different knowledge levels and from all over the world. And we heard some basic features come out on top. So the three things that we heard as a top requested changes were third-party plugins or integrations, multi-cluster management, and improved security. And to look into third-party plugins or integrations specifically, again, 3 came out on top as the most popular. So Grafana was definitely the most popular. This makes sense. It's a charting tool and very popular in general, but also fits really well with one of the main ways you can use Kubernetes Dashboard, which is for monitoring your resources. Next was Helm, which is an application package manager. And then third was cloud provider resources. So this was things like load balancers or other resources you might provision from your cloud provider. And I think this last bit kind of talks also to another great need for Kubernetes Dashboard, which is to provide this single pane of glass to show you all the resources you might be using in Kubernetes. From one of these respondents, we heard that they wanted extensibility, modularity, an API for libraries to integrate with Dashboard. It should follow the philosophy of Kubernetes and should be the foundation on which we can build our custom command center. So this idea of Dashboard as a platform was something that we heard from multiple responses, and I think is a really exciting way to extend Dashboard in the future to make it fit everyone's custom workflows. So multi-cluster management was the next thing we heard a lot about. So Kubernetes Dashboard runs in a single cluster and shows you all the things running in that single cluster. But lots of users have multiple clusters, and they want to be able to go to a single place to see all their resources across all of their clusters. And in fact, when we asked people sort of how important this was to them, most people said that it was very or extremely important to be able to see resources for multiple clusters in one place. Again, just like with cloud provider resources, I think it's really important that we be able to extend Dashboard to include more and more things in order to provide a single pane of glass for your Dashboard, or sorry, for your Kubernetes deployments. So lastly, improved security. So security is still on people's minds and still an issue that is obviously very important to consider when using Dashboard. Earlier this year, researchers found that there were over 16,000 installations of Dashboard that were exposed, and that's a huge number, and it's can very much lead to your application or your company being attacked through this vector. But running Dashboard securely is possible, and really just takes mainly the same things you would do to run Kubernetes securely in general. The URL here is for a great blog post about hardening Kubernetes, and includes lots of great tips about how to harden Dashboard, including setting up authentication, which is especially great in production. And from one participant, we heard that they operate a cluster with multiple end user groups. Many of them would find the Dashboard extremely useful, but if we could have them log in with the same credentials used to log into the cluster to only see their resources, that would be a huge win. So what this is talking to is the fact that security is obviously important for so many reasons, but it also is potentially a blocker to more people using Dashboard and Kubernetes in general. As Dan mentioned earlier, being able to share what's happening inside your cluster with non-technical stakeholders is a great thing you can do with Dashboard, and providing better and easier ways to do that would mean that more people would be able to use Dashboard, and more people would be able to be involved and understand what's happening inside the cluster. So those were the top things that we heard about and think that we should bring into Dashboard in the future. But they were just a few of the many things we heard. And there are dozens more even in GitHub as issues. So Dashboard has come a long way since 2016, and all the new features that are being added are great, but there's still a really bright future and things we can do to make Dashboard even better and the best Kubernetes UI that it can be. So I'm just going to turn it over to Dan one more time, who's going to talk about how you can get involved with the project, where you can learn more information, those things.
All right, thanks, Spencer. Yeah, if all this sounds exciting and you want to try out Dashboard or get involved, we'd love to have that happen. So the Dashboard repo is the best place to start probably for overall knowledge about Dashboard, and you can download it and learn more. Minikube, if you're not familiar, is a really easy way to run Kubernetes locally on your machine, and it's got a great integration with Dashboard. It includes Dashboard by default, so you can just run Dashboard with a command. It's super easy. And if you want to contribute or get involved further, the Slack channel is probably the best place to go. There's over 600 people in there. I'm in the Slack channel. There are people that are smarter than me in the Slack channel that can answer your questions. And that's my Twitter handle, if you're on Twitter. This is, as Spencer mentioned, SIG UI is the special interest group in Kubernetes for Dashboard that owns Dashboard. So on this page, we have all this information plus our mailing list, if you want to be part of that, and a link to our weekly Zoom call. So every week we have a video chat meeting that anyone is welcome to join. And that is all we had. Thank you very much. Any questions? Any questions? Yes.
Thanks so much for the talk.
Yeah.
I think I was the first quote. I'm not 100% sure, but
Oh,
it might
nice.
have been me.
You get a t-shirt. Just kidding.
I was wondering if, is there any idea of putting the dashboard into kubectl itself, so it's kind of like locally hosted? Because all the credentials are there. Is there anything stopping us from doing that, or?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'm unfamiliar on that. Sorry.
Just kubectl dashboard and then.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That would be a great question to ask in the Slack channel. Yeah, sorry, I don't have the answer for that. Any other questions? Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah, hi. I have a question about authorization on the dashboard. So, for example, if I want to limit some of the users to only a single namespace, or to allow them only to view but not edit pods, and then not be able to view nodes at all, would that be possible in the dashboard, or is that something in the roadmap?
I believe that is possible through RBAC in Kubernetes. So if you can configure it for Kubernetes, Dashboard will respect that. Yes, I believe so. I'm fairly certain on that.
Thank you.
Yes.
My question is related to the previous question. Like you said that you want to, dashboard is also for like end users. Is there a way, like in your demo, you were deleting the pod? Like, let's say if I'm an end user, I can just only view the status of the CPU, but there's no way I can edit the pods like that. We want to limit the end users from creating damage.
Totally. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure on that. I think, again, I believe it respects what's said in Kubernetes, but I'm not totally positive. Sorry.
Okay. one more
Sure.
question. Because I tried playing with it, and it's
Okay.
like you have to like set up something like proxy, something
Yeah.
like that. And is there a way like to deploy it like a standalone app, and then like let's say if the company if your company already have a login mechanism, like just use the company's login mechanism and then.
That's a good question. I don't think so. Is that
Okay.
your understanding, Spencer?
Not today.
Not today.
Not today, yeah.
But that's someone that also that was in the press group during the survey. So I think that's having these additional ways to authenticate users is really important. There's a lot of people like yourself who have existing authentication mechanisms, so we want to be able to leverage those to use this service.
Okay. There's still no plans for that.
It's not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I think we're about time. Sure. I think my laptop went into night mode. It's got this nice warm glow
I
happening.
have met a problem where I access the dashboard from by node pod and node IP and node pod, but it tells me certificate invalid. Why? I don't know. Can tell me the.
So it's giving you the message of what? What was the message it gave you?
Tell me the certificate is invalid.
Ah, okay. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, but that would be a great question again for the Slack channel or GitHub. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure what would be causing that. Yes. Let's maybe make this our last questions. We can, sure.
Because the two of you are both designers, I have a little more want to ask about designer. When you design the dashboard, do you have compliance or some guidelines to, like the font size or the line space of the between the lines? Because our designer always very crazy about this kind of stuff. So do you also have this compliance?
I was hoping someone would ask a design question.
For accessibility, do you want to?
Yeah, so Dashboard is built in Angular, and there's a material library that it's pulling from. So a lot of those components are set, and we can just kind of pick and choose from them. And those are set to be accessible for different types of users. But then also we have designers that are involved in the project, so they'll be providing input on those things like font size and color and all those look and feel details.
Yeah, and I know there were a lot of technical questions, so the hashtag SigUI Slack channel is a great place to ask those. People in there are very responsive and can help you dig into the specifics of your problem and figure out, help you troubleshoot exactly what's going on there.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much again, everyone, for coming out.
Thank you.